The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. We were off yesterday celebrating Juneteenth, which is the federal holiday that commemorates the quote-unquote end of slavery. I put that in quotations because, as we all know, as I have been instructed by my dear friend and mentor and who I consider to be the historian of our people, Dr. Carl Mack. In fact, the way I met Dr. Carl Mack was on an episode of Roland Martin Unfiltered about 2 years ago, where he informed us, and this was the first time I had ever come to this knowledge. He let us know that Juneteenth was not the end of slavery for the United States of America. It was the end of slavery for the state of Texas. June 19th, 1865, General Gordon Granger came to the shores of Galveston, Texas with some 10,000 Union soldiers, of which I just learned yesterday, in the year of our Lord 2023, 6,000 of those soldiers were Black Union soldiers. And I just want you to pause for a moment and consider what it was like for Black people who were enslaved in Texas to see 6,000 Black Union soldiers come with their weapons at the ready, telling these demented Confederates to let our people go. Historians state that the celebrations began immediately in the state of Texas, June 19th, 1865, and those celebrations spread across the country. It was such a momentous and, earth-shattering moment for the state of Texas, but particularly the Black people there, to see the power of the Black Union soldiers under the leadership of General Gordon Granger, right? All the other components that led to that moment, we recognize that. But on that day, at that moment, Black people started celebrating because they saw something that they never saw before. Black men with power telling the people who were abusing them to let our people go. And so those celebrations started to spread all over the country. And in fact, I first learned about Juneteenth probably going close to a decade ago when I was living in Boston, Massachusetts. And we went to a celebration in the park in Roxbury, Massachusetts, one of the most exhilarating and enjoyable. The blackest. It was just, it was a good day to be Black when I learned about Juneteenth in the first place. And it just shows you how far those celebrations spread. And so because of what happened on June 19th, 1865, those celebrations spread across the country. But it was not until December 6, 1865, that slavery ended for the entire nation with the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Between June 19th, 1865 and December 6, 1865, some 225,000 Black people were still enslaved. And so as the nation celebrates and commemorates Juneteenth, just keep in mind the liberation did not come for 225,000 more Black people until December 6, 1865. I'll talk more about that later in today's episode because it was a really bad day for Confederates and for Black conservatives. We'll talk about that in a moment. But first, Dr. Peter Hotez is a world-renowned pediatrician, virologist, scientist who developed additional vaccines that were used in the underdeveloped, or rather overexploited nations during COVID-19. Well-respected amongst his peers, amongst other scientists. Over the weekend, if you were online at all or plugged into the news at all, you saw what happened with Robert Kennedy Jr., Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk dogpiling on top of this scientist because, well, he called out Joe Rogan. He called out Joe Rogan for hosting and amplifying the anti-vax message of Robert Kennedy Jr. In response, Joe Rogan took to social media and challenged him to a debate, said, come on my show and debate Robert Kennedy Jr., who is neither a scientist nor a smart man. And you don't really debate with people who are conspiracy theorists because it amplifies the conspiracy theories. But that didn't stop Elon Musk from chiming in and egging it on. That didn't stop people like Tim Pool offering $100,000 for the debate. And then the pool of money began to grow further and further, bigger and bigger and bigger. You had more and more conservatives who wanted to see this debate happen between an actual scientist and Robert Kennedy Jr. I want to play a clip from MSNBC Mehdi Hasan, who interviewed Peter Hotez Sunday night in response to this challenge to debate.
RFK has contributed to a culture, a vaccine misinformation culture, that has led to the deaths, as you say, of hundreds of thousands of lives, and yet he's the one being celebrated by tech billionaires like Musk and Jack Dorsey, while you're being smeared and defamed. And I would say, I don't know if you've agreed to debate or not. My advice is not to, and people might find that surprising because I wrote a book about debate. But I just think there's a time and a place for a debate. I don't think a historian of World War II should debate a Holocaust denier. I just, that's my analogy here. Like, I don't think these debates between experts and cranks do anything other than elevate the cranks.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are certain things you debate. I understand what a debate about 18th century Enlightenment philosophy is, and debating Rousseau and Bishop Berkeley. I understand what political debates are. But in science, we don't typically do debates. What we do is we write scientific papers. We present our findings in front of a critical audience of our peers to solicit their input and suggestions. But one doesn't typically debate science, maybe the one-off discussion of evolution versus creationism and that sort of thing, but that's not what we do in science.
Exactly correct. You write papers, you submit them for peer review, and if it's reviewed and you accept it, it's published in a journal, and then you go to a conference and you can debate with scientists about any disagreements they have remaining about your position. One of the best responses I saw to this was across social media. There were a couple of people who said, listen, if RFK really wants to debate the validity of what Dr. Peter Hotez is saying, write an article, not an article to be published in mainstream media, but a scientific article, and publish it in a journal and let it be peer reviewed. We have processes for scientific debate. It isn't going on Joe Rogan's show and discussing it with Robert Kennedy Jr., who is an anti-vaxxer. And I absolutely love how Mehdi Hasan put it. He said, you would not ask a World War II historian to debate a Holocaust denier. What common ground based in truth can they actually find? There is no common ground because the Holocaust denier denies truth. Anti-vaxxers deny truth. But this is the nature of our times in which we live. People with the most money are some of the dumbest people in the history of our planet. And you have to forgive me because my language and my rhetoric towards these morons has changed and will get even more pointed. I used to spend a lot of time trying to elevate the discourse by saying things like intentionally obtuse when I really meant they're dumb. I used to say things like they were willfully ignorant when I really meant that they were stupid. And I feel like we've wasted a lot of time with these anti-vax morons, and to the point where we've seen hundreds of thousands of people die from the pandemic because these anti-vaxxers like Robert Kennedy Jr. invested their time and their money into spreading vaccine hesitation, vaccine hesitancy, right? Just outright fear and rejection. And now the saddest thing about it is we are on the losing side. The people who actually follow the science, the people who realize my expertise is X, Y, and Z, that person's expertise is science. This entire community's expertise is science, and we have scientific consensus amongst the vast majority of scientists across the globe that the vaccine was effective and safe. We have trials of billions of people who took the vaccine, and the prevailing claims of problems with the vaccine come through an unverified source, VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Effects Reporting System, which does not verify a single claim. But the claims of scientists have been verified by peer-reviewed research. I'm sorry, we do not have time to coddle dumb people anymore. We are empowering their agenda. I know when I say the phrase intentionally obtuse, I do mean something different than just dumb people. I do mean that they are intentionally being stupid for the purposes of their political agenda. But we don't even have time for that distinction anymore. because we really do need the world to understand that there is a base. There is a base of stupidity in this species, on this planet, of people who are either doing it on purpose for financial gain, or they have been duped so long that they are so far gone that I'm sorry, I don't have time to coddle you either, because people are still dying from the pandemic. And these are the same people. This is the same group of people. The Venn diagram of anti-vaxxers and flat earthers is probably a full circle. The Venn diagram between anti-vaxxers, between flat earthers, and between client deniers, it's probably close to at least a 75% overlap. The very worst of our society have galvanized around the richest people on the planet, and they are spreading the worst conspiracies imaginable. So forgive me if this seems a little harsh, but we don't have time to debate dummies. We got to defeat them for the sake of humanity. I wonder if you recall the video of the quote-unquote father who went into the Lego store and went off on the employees because they had on pride flag pins.
The Lego group supports what?
The Lego group pretty proudly supports the LGBTQ community. Do we not?
Yeah. Yes. But the question is, why are you all in here with those pins on? Do you think children care about what man sucks at home and what girl eats vaginas at home?
It's time to leave, man.
Do you think they care about
It's
that?
time to leave, man.
I need to prime that up in your memory banks. Keep that in mind for the rest of today's episode, because yesterday was a really difficult day for the guy who created that video. But before we get there, I have to discuss another not so intelligent person who has a lot of power. Donald Trump went on Fox News, Brett Baier last night, and all but confessed. I'm sorry. It looks like he confessed to every single thing he is being indicted for by special counsel Jack Smith. Listen to this exchange between Fox News host Brett Baier and Donald Trump, and tell me if you hear the same confession that I hear.
According to the indictment, you were here at Bedminster on July 21st, 2021, after you're no longer president, and you were recorded saying that you had a document detailing a plan of attack on another country that was prepared by the U.S. military for you when you were president. The Iran attack plan. You remember that?
Ready?
You were recorded.
It wasn't a document.
Okay.
I had lots of paper. I had copies of newspaper articles. I had copies of magazines.
I know. This is specifically a quote. You're quoted on the recording saying the document was secret, adding that you could have declassified it while you were president, but, quote, now I can't. You know this is still secret, highly confidential. And the indictment cites the recording and the testimony from people in the room saying you showed it to people there that day. So you say on this, on tape,
it says just the opposite.
that you can't declassify it, so why have it?
When I said that I couldn't declassify it now, that's because I wasn't president. I never made any bones about that. When I'm not president, I can't declassify it.
And that's what you said. You didn't declassify it.
I said no. I said I couldn't.
Could have
but that wasn't a document, Brett. There was no document. That was a massive amount of papers and everything else talking about Iran and other things. And it may have been held up or may not, but that was not a document. I didn't have a document per se. There was nothing to declassify. These were newspaper stories, magazine stories, and articles.
I'm just saying what the indictment says.
That last part is basically him trying to undo what he just did, which was to admit, again, I mean, they already have it on recording. Right. I'm not one to really give Fox News much credit, but credit to Brett Baier for being able to follow Donald Trump's fast talking, because Donald Trump is so used to being able to fast talk his way out of situations. But this is not a situation that he could fast talk himself out of. In fact, he's digging himself even deeper. So now his claim is that there were no documents. There were just newspaper articles and clippings. That's the way he's trying to get out of what he just admitted to, which was this part.
When I said that I couldn't declassify it now, that's because I wasn't president. I never made any bones about that. When I'm not president, I can't declassify it.
And that's what you said. You didn't declassify it.
I said no.
The problem for Donald Trump is that there is an audio recording that he himself admits to showing them a document that he had not declassified while he was president. Now, he just confirmed that he knows that he could not declassify that document because, well, he wasn't president at the time. And once he realized what he did, he decided to say, oh, wait a minute. No, there were no documents. It was just newspaper clippings.
There was no document. That was a massive amount of papers and everything else talking about Iran and other things. And it may have been held up or may not, but that was not a document. I didn't have a document per se. There was nothing to declassify. These were newspaper stories, magazine stories, and articles.
I'm just saying.
Now, it's not that this part is particularly important because, well, he's already admitted on previous audio that he had classified documents that he was getting ready to show the people. But Donald Trump really, if there was nothing but newspaper articles and magazine articles and clippings that you were referring to, why would you have even brought up the conversation of the inability to declassify said magazine articles? No one thinks to discuss declassifying articles from Time Magazine or Newsweek. You only discuss declassifying classified documents. But is this not the best example of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you are not even aware of how dumb you are, but you think you are an expert? Is that the theme of today's episode? Because is not Joe Rogan and Robert Kennedy, well, Robert Kennedy Jr., he's a grifting scumbag, but Joe Rogan is probably another great example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. But Donald Trump takes the prize when he really believes in his life, the ease of his life. No one has ever told him no. He's never been corrected. His life has fooled him into thinking he is smarter than he is, and he can't even handle Brett Baier on Fox News. So now what do you think he's going to do when it's time for this trial to begin?
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. Very special welcome to 3 new patrons. Jackie, thank you so much for becoming a patron. Robin, thank you so much for becoming a patron. And Graham, thank you so much for becoming a patron. This entire patron party is for the 3 of you. Turn it up, everybody. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, none of the commercial interruptions. You get access to our bi-weekly patron party, which is always a blast. Patreon.com/The BPD Show. And we'll be back right after these commercial breaks, unless you're a patron.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yeah. Welcome back. Real quick, I got to give a shout out to Andy from Ohio. Andy, thank you so much. As I'm preparing today's episode and recording, she sent me a Cash App for a happy belated Juneteenth. Now, see, that's an ally. Okay. Shout out to all the white allies who sent black people Cash Apps for Juneteenth. I saw it. I saw people do that on Twitter, and I didn't share my Cash App because I was like, whatever. But they were like, if you really want to support a black friend for Juneteenth, send them a Cash App. I guess Andy saw that from somewhere else on Twitter and said, you know what? Let me do that for Brother Ben. So I thanks so much, Andy. Cash App BPD 2018, if you're so inclined. Let's talk a little bit about 2024. This past weekend, I did an episode of Clickbaity Political Thirst Trap with Marcus Farrell and Mayor Mundell Robinson. And we are looking forward to having Dr. Cornel West be on. We wanted to have him on this past Sunday, but looks like we're going to have to go for another Sunday episode to get him on. We came back together because he announced that he's running for president, and now he's running not with the People's Party, which is, thank you, Dr. West, but running with the Green Party. Here's a clip of Ajuma Baraka, who is the former vice presidential candidate for the Green Party, as he discussed the 2024 election with Brianna Joy Gray of The Hill Rising. And I want you to listen to this clip because this particular attitude, and I like Brother Ajuma well enough. I think he's a decent person, and I think his politics are generally good on most issues. But this idea of accelerationism that is prevailing on the left is detrimental to everyone. And I need you to hear this clip that is going around, making its rounds, and it is of Ajuma Baraka discussing the fact that he would rather see Donald Trump win in 2024 than Joe Biden win in 2024. And this is the exact sentiment that I have a deeply rooted problem against, because there is a fallacious assumption underneath all of this, all of accelerationism, that what emerges out of the chaos that comes through accelerationism, which is to allow the country and allow everything to go down as fast as humanly possible so that something can emerge from the ashes. Historically, have we ever seen a time when, in the face of violence and war and destruction, have we ever seen progress emerge from that? Listen to this.
Let Donald Trump come back again in 2024. I believe in the people. I believe we're going to survive another Donald Trump. Okay? I'm more concerned about surviving another Biden administration. Because for me, the cutting edge of neo-fascism in the U.S. isn't just the so-called Trumpites. It is the neoliberal ruling class that has completely captured the state. They are the cutting edge of a particular kind of fascism in this country, the neoliberal Democrats.
It's hard to argue with that, and I'm glad I'm not in an ideological position where I want to.
I'm sorry, but Donald Trump, is he not a part of the ruling elite? At what point did we start believing that Republicans are not a part of the ruling elite? Conservatives are not a part of the ruling elite. Rich, billionaire white men who can command the media the way they see fit. When did they stop being a part of the ruling elite? Or is it, God forbid, that they're rooting this analysis, this quote unquote analysis, in the fact that the word neoliberal contains liberal? Could it be that? Because nobody has performed neoliberalism better than the Republican Party. In fact, it was brought to us in part by Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, right? Conservative across the pond and a conservative in the White House of the United States of America. They brought neoliberal economic control to this country. So when did we stop thinking that conservatives and Republicans, who are the beneficiaries of neoliberal economic policy, when did we stop believing that they were actually a part of the ruling elite? Okay, so never mind the logic being problematic at best, the accelerationism that's underneath that and the willingness to turn this country back over into the hands of fascists. Listen, vote for who you want to, but please, in your arguments, can we at least agree that accelerationism is societal suicide? Like, why should we make the assumption, the very dangerous assumption, that if we turn this back over into the hands of actual fascists who want to add on top of their neoliberal fascism, they want to add on top of it democratic control. They do not want democracy. How is it rational to think that we would be able to recover from people who have been strategically working on dismantling the mechanisms of democracy for decades and now are in striking distance? You can, again, vote for who you want to vote for, but please, let's not do it based on fallacious arguments. Let's not do it by absolving the fascists who are at the gate, who are actually in the system already, the people who are actively working to suppress your vote, to suppress democracy, who are actively working, calling for the execution of gay and transgender people. right? That's who we're dealing with when we're discussing the modern Republican Party and the modern conservative movement. They are actively advocating for the execution of the LGBTQIA community. And for us to just casually say, oh, the Bidens are a form of neoliberalism that Republicans aren't, and then some? Are we working with the same definition of neoliberalism? Because neoliberalism is an economic paradigm. It is an economic system that every part of the ruling elite benefits from, especially the Republican Party, who consistently gives themselves tax breaks. 2017 tax breaks, $2 trillion worth of tax breaks going to the wealthiest in this country. What type of systemic controls do you think they employed with that? Do you think that they just went home and went to the beach or got into a submarine and went to the bottom to try to go see the Titanic? Do you think they all just did that with their money, or did they employ and engage in systemic suppression of voters' rights, in systemic oppression against the LGBTQIA community and the Black community? Do you think that these billionaires who took that 2017 tax break, do you think they just went home and decided, we have our money and we're just going to sit quietly over here because we don't want to get involved in politics as the ruling elite? Now, again, we are making every effort that we can to get Dr. Cornel West on a couple of shows. Clickbaity, we're hoping to get him next Sunday, this coming Sunday. The podcast, if I can get him on the podcast, I certainly will, and most certainly on Like It or Not with Rebecca Azor and DJ exclusive, because we want to engage, we want to talk, we want to discuss, and we want to discuss our concerns and listen to his rebuttals to them and see exactly where he stands and let everyone hear him for himself. I know you can hear him on other podcasts, but there will be questions that we will ask that other people aren't asking. So we're not afraid to engage with Dr. West or with a third party candidate because, one, I have so much respect for Dr. West, but what I don't have any respect for is accelerationism. I don't, because it assumes that we have time to recover from the destruction that will come when the fascists are given the power. So let's go back to Juneteenth and the meltdown that happened across conservative media, across the Confederacy. Charlie Kirk, who is the founder of Turning Points USA, he is also the founder of Turning Points USA Faith. That last part is very important. Keep that in mind. There's Turning Points USA, and then there's Turning Points USA Faith. This is what he said on his Twitter timeline yesterday. He said, "You should be working today, not taking off for a CRT-inspired federal holiday that competes with July 4th. And then he went on. Funny enough, can I just make an aside real quick? Funny enough, these are the same people who are trying to push Robert Kennedy Jr. on the Democratic Party, because the tweet before that says this from Charlie Kirk, quote, "RFK Jr. is gaining real steam. The media is struggling to censor him. He is challenging the Democratic Party from within." I just want to throw that in there for a bonus for you guys to understand that the guy who is being promoted by the likes of white supremacists adjacent, alleged white supremacists, got to cover my butt, right? Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon has even come out for Robert Kennedy Jr. That's the guy that they want to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. But I digress. So yesterday, Charlie Kirk went even further, and he said, if Juneteenth was really about emancipation, why not September 22nd, 1862, when Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, or January 1st, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He just starts doubling down on attacking Juneteenth. I played for you earlier a clip from back a few months ago when this black father, and I'm using air quotes there because people, when they do these types of stunts, they try to describe themselves in the most innocuous way possible. But I played you the clip of the black father who went into the Lego store and verbally attacked the Lego employees because they were wearing flag pins. Listen again to this small portion.
But the question is, why are you all in here with those pins on? Do you think children care about what man sucks at home and what girl eats vaginas at home?
Leave, man.
Do you think they care about
It's
that?
time to leave, man.
Guess who that black man works for? That quote unquote black father, because he described himself as a black father, but he didn't identify himself as an employee of Turning Points USA Faith. He's a contributor at Turning Points USA Faith. In fact, the reason that video went viral was because Charlie Kirk shared it across all of his social media, and this black preacher by the name of John K. Amanchukwu, I'm sorry, and I don't mispronounce his. If I mispronounce his last name, it's not because I'm trying to be funny. It's because it's a difficult name. Y'all know I have a hard time with names. But Pastor John K. Amanchukwu was the guy who was in that video. Now, that was old news. I really just was joking yesterday when I was saying that it was going to be a really hard time for black conservatives. Because here's the thing, if you're a black conservative and you get your paycheck from these people who are alleged white supremacists, white supremacist adjacent, certainly Nazi and fascist adjacent, if you're getting your check from people who hate black people so much that they would rather go to work on a federal holiday than to take off a federal holiday because they just don't want to be associated with that critical race theory inspired holiday, yesterday had to be extremely difficult for you because you had to sit back and watch your bosses just outright attack your blackness. And you can't really say a whole lot unless you're willing to risk your paycheck. So if you're, I mean, and this is me making the assumption that these black conservatives like John, Reverend Wu Truth, REVWUTRUTH across social media. I'm going underneath the assumption that he actually is a black man, that he actually does love his blackness, that he loves his black people. But then my question to him that he blocked me for like 2 seconds later, I've never been blocked so quick. I just asked him yesterday, like, brother pastor, from one preacher to another, does your congregation of black people know that your other boss believes this about their freedom? That he believes that we should not celebrate Juneteenth, that he dismisses it as a CRT-inspired holiday, that he is a part of this cabal of white people who have made their careers off of attacking wokeness. I'm really curious if that black preacher's black congregation realizes that he is employed also by someone who hates blackness, who hates the idea of being woke, which is just the nice way for them to say the N-word in 20 and 23. I wonder because what has happened is a lot of black voices in the conservative space have been amplified because they agree with the homophobia. This is why I brought back the Lego clip. Rev Wu Truth at Rev Wu Truth across social media became a sensation, a star. I mean, amongst black people, amongst conservatives, because we've already discussed the intersection of the bigotry that they have common ground on, right? And we've discussed how many times are we going to see black people start to align with white supremacists because they have an agreement on the homophobia and the transphobia. But days like Juneteenth, which is not even really the right holiday for us to celebrate in terms of the actual end of slavery, but anything associated with blackness, anything that associates with blackness is under attack by the very people who are employing people like Rev Wu Truth. Now, he's a contributor over there. I don't know what percentage of his income comes from it, but I do know what percentage of his notoriety comes from it. All of it. All of it. Because how many people even knew this guy existed before Charlie Kirk put him on his shoulders and say, look, here's a black man who agrees with us. Well, I wonder if his black congregation knows. And I'm not just trying to come after that brother, because I'm sure he's a good black man. I'm sure he loves his children just as much as I love my children. I'm sure he loves the Lord as much as I love the Lord. But I really do want to know if his black congregation realizes that he is working for a person who cannot stand their blackness. Juneteenth is a really hard day for black conservatives and Confederates. I wonder why they have that pain and anguish in common. Patrons, stay tuned. Everyone else, we'll see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.